7:38, Nashville's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Very busy morning. Michael Patrick Leahy joins us now from the Tennessee Star for our daily visit that we do at about 7:36. And Michael, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Apparently, from what I understand, your appearance at the Republican Women of Rutherford County meeting last night, the big speech went very well.
Yes, Dan, and they had listened to you and me earlier in the day, and you have a lot of fans in Murfreesboro. They specifically said, we listened to you on a Dan Mandis morning show in Nashville. We listened all the time. And they were, it was a great crowd. And they asked me, they asked me to suggest, what should be done in the next 12 months. And by the way, the dinner there at the Carriage Lane Inn was fabulous.
Okay.
So one of the things that I told them 10 things, but here's one, which was relevant to them in Murfreesboro at Middle Tennessee State University. Publicly oppose anti-Semitism and stand bravely with your Jewish friends.
Well, and that dovetails with the story that we had yesterday, where we have this MTSU student newspaper editor, and he made some very controversial, oddly enough, pro-Israel statements.
Well, he didn't even make controversial statements. All he did, his name is Matthew Giffen. He was the editor of MTSU Sidelines, the student newspaper there. All he did was write a story about a fellow MTSU student who expressed concern about his friends in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
That was published on October 27th.
And that, as I said yesterday, that is akin to putting up a poster of a loved one who has been taken hostage by Hamas, and these nut jobs on the other side are taking them down.
Well, what happened then, it was put up on Instagram a couple days later, and then the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, anti-Israel lobby of young people in the MTSU community started attacking him. And in a cowardly way, the student editorial board, which has a faculty advisor, by the way, his name, as far as I can tell, is Leon Allagood. He's a former reporter for the Tennessean. I don't think that will shock you. He's the associate professor at the School of Journalism. We've reached out to him for comment. We haven't heard any comment about it. But we've asked him, why did the editorial board take down this, straightforward article?
Yeah.
And then they put this statement out, which basically said, we apologize for putting out this article because we didn't equitably treat what was happening to Palestinians in Gaza. This was after the horrific murder of 1,400 Israelis.
Yeah.
And so Leon Allagood, former Tennessean reporter, from what we can tell, is the faculty advisor. And the faculty advisor would have been involved in advising the student editorial board whether to A, take this article down, and B, put a statement apologizing for it. So we've reached out to him. He hasn't said anything. MTSU officials, frankly, I'm going to call them out right now. They are anti-Semitic. And MTSU officials, they wouldn't comment on it. And when I went there last night to talk to the Republican women of Rutherford County, many of them told me that they had had interactions with high-level officials at MTSU, and they are very, very, very aggressively leftist and do not entertain any ideas that are counter to that leftist progressivism, and now it's morphed into anti-Semitism. So I'm calling out MTSU officials. They are anti-Semitic for allowing the student newspaper and their faculty advisor, Leon Allagood, former Tennessean reporter, to take down the article that the now former newspaper editor Matthew Giffen put up.
And here's the crazy thing. They could have left his article up and then put up another article written about, pro-Hamas or, whatever. I mean, just opposing viewpoints.
They didn't want to do that.
I'm sorry, Michael Patrick Leahy. I thought college was supposed to be a battle of ideas, not silencing. But Matthew Giffen, this is emblematic of what is going on across the country, where they don't want the Israeli side, the Jewish side, to be given. It's all just about, all of the civilian casualties, I'm air quoting, the civilian casualties of Gaza when in reality, as you and I have spoken about many times, and I have too, well, they're being used as human shields. That's why those casualties are going up. But nobody wants to talk about that. And that's counter to what the leftists are trying to, their narrative. And I would love to speak to Matthew Giffen, although something tells me that Matthew is probably right now dealing with an awful lot.
I would say so. Also, our lead story at the Tennessee Star, TennesseeStar.com right now, Congressman Scott DesJarlais praised young Matthew Giffen for his reporting and for his accurate description of what one of his fellow students said that was accurate and not influenced by the left-wing anti-Israel, pro-Hamas propaganda that is perpetrating throughout academia. Now, Dan, you said something very interesting. You said academia, higher education, is supposed to be the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
But you said that, and I know when you said that, if you look back in the chronology, when was that a true statement? When was academia, when were colleges in America actually free and open marketplaces of ideas?
You know, Mike, a good question. 60s, 70s?
Yeah.
And somewhere it just morphed into, and I think it's probably social media.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when social media started happening, we've raised an entire generation that simply can't handle opposing ideas. And that's what's going on.
I think you're right. I think it was late 90s, 2000, with the rise of Facebook and social media, when academic intolerance, as we've seen right here at MTSU, accelerated, and the possibility of free exchange of ideas without intimidation began to evaporate.
You know, it's interesting because you look at what's going on in places like Yale and some of these other places, and I have heard from so many people who have said, you know what, I am second guessing whether or not to send my kids to college. And I mean, that is almost a daily occurrence now. And I think that this is going to be part of the reasoning why these colleges are just, I saw that story, I think it was a week or so ago, about all these alums that are no longer giving money to these colleges. And so I don't know if this is going to have a lasting effect or impact on these very leftist colleges. It might, because I know that there's a lot of people that are watching right now that are realizing, perhaps for the first time, what's going on in these universities. Now, if you listen to talk radio, you know this has been going on for quite some time. But I think a lot of other people, maybe their eyes are just now beginning to open.
I had 10 suggestions for the Republican women of Rutherford County. Last night, I talked about one of them, to publicly oppose anti-Semitism. But another of those suggestions, do not send your kids or grandkids to an Ivy League or elite college, because they will be brainwashed. And interestingly enough, Dan, we were talking about this other story that happened yesterday. Did you see this, where the 900 members of the Detroit Jewish Federation flew into Dulles Airport?
Yep. And
the bus drivers refused to take them to the March for Israel.
Yeah, and they missed your plane.
Pure anti-Semitism. And it is here. It is a problem. You know, back in a lot of people like to watch World War II movies.
Yes.
And when you watch those movies, the good guys, that's us.
Yep.
And the bad guys were the Nazis. There were not Nazi sympathizers in the United States of America.
Yep. You got all these, mostly obviously Jewish folks who are trying to get to Washington, D.C. for the big march. And the bus drivers just decided it was clearly intentional. They knew who these people were. They knew the planes that they were catching, and they knew where they were going. And they just decided, you know what? We're not going to take you to the airport.
Clear anti-Semitism.
Crazy.
And it is growing. It is a minority of the United States right now, but is growing. And in particular, though, Dan, it is growing among younger Americans for a couple of reasons. Number one, TikTok, the Chinese Communist Party owned social media operation, is putting out Hamas propaganda, pro-Hamas propaganda in what Chairman Xi, the dictator who runs China, said short form video is his secret weapon. That's number one. And number two, academic institutions at the higher level, including right here in Middle Tennessee, Middle Tennessee State University, anti-Semitism exists at the highest levels right now in those universities.
And not surprising, of course, not surprising at all, because sadly, this is where academia seems to be going. By the way, Rashida Tlaib, this just came out early this morning. Rashida Tlaib apparently is a member of a secret Facebook group where Hamas terrorists are glorified. Aaron sent this to me. She has been part of this controversial Facebook group for years. I guess for 6 years. I guess they call it a secret social media group. It's closed. You have to, I guess apply to be a member or whatever the heck it is.
Be accepted by the administrator of it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And, we all know she's from Michigan. And so where did all of those 900 or so Jewish people that were not able to go to Washington, D.C., that also happened in Michigan.
Yeah,
so,
they landed at the Dulles Airport, which, as you know, is about 35 miles away from downtown Washington. You have to have some sort of transportation to get there.
Yep.
From Dulles to downtown Washington for that March for Israel. By the way, reports are about over 200,000 people showed up for that march, which was very significant. But they weren't able to do it because of anti-Semitism.
It's unbelievable. And I guess it is believable because, and you and I talked about this I think it was yesterday or the day before, where I asked the question, I posed the question, is this causing more anti-Semitism, or is it just exposing the anti-Semitism that has always been there? And I forget what your answer was. I think it's always been there.
I think it's exposing it, but because of the weakness of our academic institutions in opposing anti-Semitism, and because of the ubiquitous nature of TikTok and other pro-Hamas social media, it is expanding. It is still a minority within the country, but right now, what is needed is strength from our academic institutions to stop this. I don't see it anywhere.
You realize that's never going to happen.
I agree with you. Why are we funding these academic institutions then?
Because we're dumb.
Well, I think
not us here on WTN, but I mean,
sure.
This is what we do. Is we're funding this. We have been for years.
I think Congressman Scott DesJarlais, who represents this district, will have some questions for the administrators at MTSU. I think Governor Lee, who we contacted for comment, did not get a comment back from him yet. I'm sure he will comment on it. But Governor Lee, should be engaged in this, and he should be defending the right of young Matthew Giffen to write an accurate article that describes how one of an MTSU student is concerned about his friends in Tel Aviv.
Do you think, in our remaining moments, God, this time flies. I don't know. These
so much
segments.
Fun.
So we know at the college level, I mean, we've been documenting 1619 Project, DEI, now, of course, all of this anti-Israel stuff. Clearly at the college level has been for years. This is happening now, I'm assuming, more and more at the high school level because I'm seeing a lot of stories about these things going on at the high school level.
And in New York City at the grade school level.
And in New York City at the grade school level. What's at the TennesseeStar.com today?
Well, the TennesseeStar.com, our lead story is about this. We also have a very interesting story about the author of a book called Dark Aeon. It's about transhumanism, which is the mixture of artificial intelligence, technology, and the human brain, and the dangers thereof. It's a fascinating interview that we did with Joe Allen, who's the author of that book.
All right, I'm going to take a look at that. Thank you very much, Michael Patrick Leahy.